Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to give you sort of a basic introduction to this game called Sand Raiders of Sophie. And in order to do this, I'm going to basically make a new character. So the characters are tied to the region that you're located in. So if I, for example, selected Central US, then I would have separate characters and separate progression than being in a different region. So think about which region you pick when you start the game, because your character and your progression is locked to that region. And think about, your friends, who might you want to play with, what servers are they going to be on, make sure that you're all on the same server. And then let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is select a character. This is just visual, what you want them to look like and what their name is. You can make new characters. You can have up to 3 characters. It only makes sense to have 1. And maybe it'll add some more customization at a later point, but at this point it's basically just a character for you. You'll still display as your username instead. So let's take a look at the different things in the UI. So you can play with up to 5 other people for a total of 6 people. You can invite your friends. You have a couple of things at the top that are worth looking at. So we have different currencies here. These are crowns, basically basic coins for just the main currency that's used here. We have scrap materials, which are used for building your tramplers, your walkers here. Pneumatic parts, which are used for building higher tier components, and computing modules, which are used for building the most advanced tier of components. So actually, I think, let's look at these things backwards. So you've got a tech tree. At the beginning, you only have these basic tiers unlocked. And sort of your main progression, as said, locked to your region, not locked to your character, locked to your region, is unlocking stuff in the tech tree, right? So you have all kinds of things. You can unlock new components. You can unlock new things in the shop. You can unlock, bigger frames, more armored components, and so on. Some of the early unlocks only cost crowns. So one strategy that you can do is you can sell off all of the stuff that you start with, get a bunch of crowns, unlock a couple things, and then delete your character and make a new one. Your progression, as in tech tree, unlocks is server-wide, while your storage, your inventory, and so on is character-based. So you can get a little bit of a head start by making two additional characters, deleting them. There's a cooldown on doing that. But you could just basically sell off everything, go unlock, a couple things that only cost crowns, then delete the character, make a new one. You can do that. It takes 24 hours to be able to make a new character after you delete it in each of the 3 slots. So you can do it a bit. Doesn't really matter though, because you'll quickly progress to the point where you need other components, other resources that you need to go find. So in your storage, at the beginning, you have some basic weapons. You've got a revolver, you've got a pistol, you've got a single shot rifle, you've got a shotgun, you have some rifle ammunition, pistol ammunition, and shotgun ammunition. Then you have some cannon kits. This is basically the 80mm one is a long range, single shot. You have to reload after every shot, accurate. Then you have the auto cannon, which is high recoil. You can shoot, but you overheat your gun over time if you shoot continuously and you have a lot of recoil. So basically spam it at close and medium range. And then you have the shotgun cannon kit, which does less damage at range, certainly, and also less damage to components and more damage to enemy players. And then you have ammunition for those 3 guns. Just the basic ammunition. You have these fuel rods, which can be used to boost your speed temporarily. You have food, which allows you to respawn quickly. and then you have some scrap which is used for building stuff. At the beginning, the shop allows buying the basic things that you need to survive, but you'll unlock more things in the shop later on, right? So what you can do is you can then start an expedition, but what you actually should do before you do that is go to blueprints. Now, it keeps all of your blueprints that are saved locally on your computer, which is why I have a whole bunch of blueprints. When you start out, the game will give you these 3 starter blueprints that are all, well, most of the player base thinks that they're not very good, generally because they have the reactor very exposed, and they can be improved upon somewhat. So what you should do is you should create your own blueprint. And with only the basic materials, you can still create something that's better than with what you're given at the beginning. So you've got a chassis. It has a weight capacity. We can't exceed that weight capacity. Then we have a couple essential things. We need to have all of these core components on our chassis. So like a super basic thing would be to say, all right, we put a steering wheel on it. We put a reactor on it. We need an entrance. Put some sort of entrance on it. We need like a captain's quarters, and then maybe crew quarters or something like that, right? Then we've fulfilled all the basic requirements, but we can probably do it a bit better. So let's just undo all this, and we're not going to get too fancy, but just a little bit. Like let's put, say, crew compartment there. Then we can put the captain's quarters here. Then we're going to want a helm. We'll put it on top. And then we're going to put the entrance here so that players have to go through the entrance to go through this room before they can access the rest of your stuff. Then we can put the reactor, say, down here where it has a bit of cover from your frontal components, right? The arrow is pointing towards the front. And then we can add some utility components, like we can add some storage shelves, for example, like this, to store loot on. And we can add a turret mount. And we could add another turret mount if you have 2 people here on board. And we could just add like a basic floor tile here. We could even try some more fun stuff. Like not going to get too fancy, we also don't have too many things to choose from, but we can definitely make some somewhat interesting things, right? Something like that. For like say you had 2 people on board, you'd have 2 guns for 2 people. You have 3 beds, because this was a double crew room that we put in. Then there are some basic like support structures which we're not going to use right now, or the balconies. Then we need to edit some wall connections. So we want a wall there, we want door. Then for some reason we're having some reachability issues. This is because every component needs to be accessible from the captain's quarters, and it turns out I didn't put the captain's quarters in. I instead put in a single crew compartment when I wanted to put it in captain's quarters. So now we're good to go. So from the front we have a bit of protection for the reactor. We have some guns pointing forward. If people board, then they need to go through an enclosed room before they can access everything else. We can use the shelf to jump up quickly. So, we've made something simple, right? And that's sort of the fun, is that you can design your own builds here. Then you go to your blueprints, you find the one that you made, and you build it. And it's actually cheaper than the thing that it started us out with. And, instead of using these default grumpy walkers, we've now made our own design. And you can make lots of fancy things later on when you have more components, but that's not for this video. Then you can go plan an expedition. And to do an expedition, you should bring along some weapons. I personally am partial to the revolver. So we take the revolver, we take some ammo for it. this is basically what you have on your person when you go in. Then let's continue. We also need to bring along the actual weapons. These are just mounts for weapons. So we could bring like an 80 mil cannon and a 40 mil cannon. There we go. Now we could bring some ammo for each gun. Like 2 stacks, 3 stacks. There we go. We don't need so many energy rods. Let's bring like 2. And then we should bring some food for respawning. Quickly. There we go. And what we can also do is we can bring... You could bring spare weapons in case you die and you need to... So that you have something that you can equip when you respawn, basically. Something like this. Basic setup of stuff that you're bringing. Then you have 2 different modes here. You have this, which is basically a Battle Royale mode, where you have a storm, it shrinks, and everyone loads in at the beginning, and you can't escape till a certain amount of time has passed and the zone has shrunk the first time. And there's more loot available, but people are potentially also more aggressive, more likely to fight here. The alternative is to do Voyage, where there's basically just a server that runs continuously. You can enter and leave whenever you want. You can also leave the map because there's no storm that's shrinking. There might be more people on the server overall, but they're all going to be very spread out. So, yeah, more loot here, but it's timed, and here you just have the freedom to do whatever you want. And then you can choose how many. If we're going alone, we would do solo, and reload it. And then let's take a look. I'm not going to do like a full run. We're basically just going to do the bare bones basics here to see what you need to do when you load in. So you want to take a look around, you want to put your guns on the turret mounts, you want to put ammo into the guns, and then you want to get moving. And overall, I guess I didn't explain this before, like there's of course ship-to-ship combat. Any component can be destroyed, but if your reactor is destroyed, then the whole trampler is destroyed and can't be repaired. Everything else can be repaired. Or at least its functionality can be restored. In order to, fix some of the walls, you'll actually need repair kits, which are something you can obtain later. First you load in, you look at your new creation here, and we wait for it to drop down. We go inside, and then if we had a crew member, they could sleep in one of these beds here. We're gonna, our bed is here. If you want to capture someone else's, you need to get into their captain's quarters and interact with this device. That's why we want the captain's quarters to be somewhat protected. Then what you do is you grab your guns. You can parkour your way up and place them. You can also use the ladder. And then you need to grab your chest with supplies. You need to load your guns. Then you want to put your spare stuff here. We basically have some food, some energy rods, and so on. We can put it in the locker here. That way, if we die and respawn, we can grab the shotgun. We've got our reactor. We turn it on. While it's on, it releases a big smoke plume that can be seen from far away. So that's how you can see where other players are. And we're also going to need to actually load the shell into this gun here. There we go. And we've got a map. So we have 2 escapes quite near to us. We have various other escapes in other parts of the map. There are a bunch of points of interest. There are forts, which all look somewhat similar. They look like a fort, relatively small. They're protected by either a minefield or by a bot spawner. And then you have these other points of interest. They're all protected by bot spawners as well. and you can go loot them to get resources. What we're going to do, though, is take a look around first. Over there I see some smoke, like there is another player over there. We don't really want to get into a fight for this video. So let's move. I think we're just going to move to the escape. I think we have a coral field in the way. Maybe we'll move to the escape that's straight ahead of us. So you can turn left and right. You can also strafe left and right. And you can move forwards and backwards at speed 1 or speed 2. And just to demonstrate something as well, I'm going to show you what an energy rod can do. And suddenly we're moving much faster for a moment. And we have a minefield ahead, which we don't want to run into. So let's move around the minefield, ideally. Over there we can see a point of interest. It's a town, which we're not going to visit, but we kind of need to move in that direction, so we'll move past that. I think I'm going to show you guys how to loot just one of the basic things on our path. So we have these things, these boats, and they have like small amounts of loot. These are basic points of interest, but looting those can be a good strategy early on to get basic resources. You can turn off your reactor when you're not moving, and that conserves fuel, but much more importantly, it makes you less visible from a distance. And overall, the inventory management system always uses these crates, so any place that you would want to loot something has these empty crates, and then you basically run around and you put stuff from that crate into your crate. See what else there is. Doesn't seem to be much. Let's check upstairs. Right, and now we've looted some extra ammo and weapons. Like getting these common things is very easy. You can just run around, look for boats like this, for example. The more valuable locations have zombies guarding them, which is why we have a pistol. You know, you've got your loot, and you just put it on a shelf. And we have some stuff. We have some shotgun shells, we have some extra pistol ammo and so on. And let's keep moving. So that's the basics of looting, right? There's better loot, of course, at the larger points of interest, where some of the loot is also hidden behind locked doors where you need to blow them up using an explosive barrel or using your cannon, for example. These boats are located all over the place. You can find them basically anywhere. And you can also leave the map, just leave the edge of the map. You know, there aren't any large points of interest, but you will find the boats there. And that's if you're getting into too much player versus player combat, then that can be a good strategy because you're completely safe. Or you're almost completely safe. That thing is a bot spawner, by the way, that's what they look like. If you're not on the map, then you're unlikely to encounter hostile players, is the bottom line. Alright, so there's an escape nearby. I don't know exactly where it is, we'll have to take a look. The map layout is always different every time. But we're going to look at that and show you how you extract. Essentially, it's an extraction shooter is the genre, I suppose. I guess actually I see something we can tutorialize for you as well. So we have a boat here that has a bit better loot. Okay, that's either the sun setting or something blowing up. Flash of red. We're going to do this. You can just space for an emergency brake. You need to turn a bit. Alright, so basically you see these red doors. Those you can blow up and there's usually better loot behind them. Being shot at by zombies, we'll deal with that later. These rusty cannons are pretty inaccurate. Yeah, we got both doors though. Right, you get your pistol. Or revolver, I guess. Let's also turn off the engine again to avoid attracting too much attention. Ow! Oh, we don't have any armor yet, of course. So if I die, we can also show how that works. Okay, there's one more zombie. Right. So I died now, and now we could go get the shotgun. We can use a quick respawn, or we can wait a full minute to respawn slowly. So let's take a look here. We can see what's happening. Nothing is happening. There's one zombie underneath. So we use a quick respawn. We could go to our shelf. We could grab, like, the shotgun. You wouldn't die this quickly to zombies later on because you can pick up what they've dropped, right? And you go find your own body. It's here. And then what we do is we grab a crate of loot again and right, and we go around and loot stuff. You know, we can find shells, we can find random crafting materials, we can find locked boxes, but we don't have a key. We found a smuggler's jacket. That's basic armor, so it's, you know, a shield that regenerates. Essentially, we should have some generating shortly. There we go. And you know, then you can go in. You can grab various materials. More food for more respawns. You can get the crafting materials there for constructing tramplers. Here, and a bit of it is also managing sort of these chests. Now you could parkour your way up there to get the loot up there too, but I think we've basically taught everything that I wanted to show at this site, so we're going to just leave with this. Sometimes you can parkour your way up without using the entrance, depending on how you park. Right, so there's currently 2 food available on shelves. If I put this on any shelf, now we have 4 food available because I looted 2 food, right? And generally anything that's behind one of these red doors is going to be better or rarer loot. Now let's go find that escape. And during the night, the visibility is reduced, which is actually good if you don't want to encounter players. And of course, at some point, right, the PvP combat is what appeals to a lot of people as well, but at the beginning, you kind of need to do some basic looting, and even later on, you need to do actual looting to get stuff, because stealing it from other players only works if they've actually done any looting. And usually the types of people looking for fights are the types of people who aren't doing the looting themselves. Right, we have some meters here. We have something that tells how fast we're going. We have a compass. We have, right, that shows if we're flat or not. But what's important here is we have 2 gauges. The first one is how many minutes until the fuel rod is empty. Now you can still move after your fuel rod is empty, so it's not something to worry about currently. They might make it at some point that your maneuverability is lower, but currently it's the case that it doesn't really matter. And then you have the second meter, which is how full your fuel tank is. And those 2 things can be different, because currently we only have an engine using power, but when you have more components that require power, then this gauge will deplete more quickly. Here, this is the extraction tower, so we're going to move towards that, and there's something burning there, which is that's a wreckage of something. It's not another player, so we're going to park right here. And we go to the tower. Extract. Now it's possible, right, that someone's camping here. Although personally I've actually not really run into extraction campers. I've heard lots of people complain about it, but never actually run into them myself. Maybe it'll happen now. Maybe not. What's burning over there is the wreckage of one of a bot trampler. They spawn in when you get close to these spawner towers. And now we have to wait a bit. While we're doing that, we could check out the burning wreckage, or we could grab a bit of loot around here. Sometimes there's a bit of loot at the extraction, like over there I can see some energy rods. So probably the sensible thing to do with my time is to keep an eye out for anyone who approaches. And to go and hoover up this loot, we need a crate. Some shells. Some energy rods. Right, we grab all that, and then we could put it in a box, which we did. Put the box on a shelf. Anything that's just lying on the ground will not be extracted, so we need to put stuff on a shelf or on our person when we leave. Let's take a look at that wreckage. We still have a bit of time. I can't really see it from here. So then the ship that dropped us off will appear, and there we go, it's appearing. Then it takes a bit of time to calibrate. During this time, if the reactor turned off, if you get rammed out of position, or if you turn it on and move, then the extraction will be interrupted. Or if someone climbs up the radio tower and cancels the extraction. But the likeliest way is that someone rams you during the calibration phase. And now we wait for a zipline, and we're out of there. So that's what a basic run looks like without looting anything fancy. And then we see what we got out of it. A bunch of stuff. And at that point you can go to your storage, you could sell off things that you don't want. Most of the resources are used for unlocking things in the tech tree. It's worth checking in the tech tree before you sell off stuff. Like medkits, for example, aren't used. We could sell that immediately. If you're not going to use a specific weapon, like let's say you don't want to use these breech loaders, sell them off. And keep anything that you do use. Keep some ammo for the weapons that you want to use. Sell off weapons that you don't use. And go check the tech tree. We're going to need a bunch of crowns at the beginning to unlock stuff, which you can either do, as I said, by selling off everything on another character and deleting it, or just by actually doing a bit more looting than we just did in the tutorial. And then you unlock stuff, you improve your blueprint, and that's the basic plan. So I hope this video was useful. If you have any questions, leave them below, and thanks for watching.